Hello and welcome from ISM World 2023 here in Dallas, Texas. We are really pleased to share with you the latest insights about what supply chain and procurement leaders are driving and how to become the next frontier to really define the future and the impact. I'm not here alone. I'm together with Christoph and Ruth. Christoph.
My name is Christoph Bode. I'm a professor of operations management at the Business School of the University of Mannheim, where I am responsible for the endowed chair of procurement.
And my name is Ruth Schildke, and I'm currently doing my PhD at Christoph's chair.
Awesome. And last but not least, Marcel Vollmer, and I'm really pleased being here today and sharing the insights firsthand for you to really get already an overview about what will be the priorities of the future for supply chain and procurement, directly linked with what a CEO and the C-suite is interested in. So let's get started. Sharing with you something what you might know, and I'm building here an overview and link it on what a BCG study from March this year provided us with. The CEO priorities are growth and of course the profitability, the margin. This means directly bringing down the cost. This is what you see here. There's a little bit more. It is also about driving innovations for the future of the business, defining the strategies, as well as finding the right talents, attracting the talents we need in the future. We have certain opportunities in the current situation. You see it on the top. Climate sustainability due to the regulations is definitely one of them, but also the investments in technology what we see. So artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, probably you have tried it by yourself. It's amazing what this technology can do, and more companies are implementing it and also seeing how can they adapt best to the available technologies. But there's also risk. You see it in the bottom line, and yes, it is a lot. It is COVID, what all of us remember very well, including the lockdowns. It's a war in the Ukraine. It is cyber risk, what we have. It's the energy crisis. Prices are going up and up. One single ship in the Suez Canal can bring an entire supply chain between Asia and Europe to a standstill. But there's much more. The inflation, the labor market challenges, what we have. So this is basically the framework we are living in and where we need to see how to really define the right priorities. CEOs are accountable and responsible for the success of a company, and basically they are looking now in how to really drive the cost reductions. This is, by the way, equally important in all the regions, North America, in Europe, in Asia. What does it mean and how to do it? You see it directly, the line below. It is bringing down the direct spend, but also reducing indirect spend. Core priorities what procurement leaders are dealing with on a daily basis. But there's more. It is redesigning the processes. It is thinking about a lean organizational setup to prepare yourself for the future. So to really summarize it, what a procurement and supply chain leader like we are most interested in is bringing down the cost for direct and indirect materials. On the one side, 78% are looking into the opportunity, and this is a core role what procurement has. On the other side, also combining the cost-cutting and efficiency improvement programs to really help here to drive business results. So when you look at the challenges what we have, and of course the inflation is one of them, the interest rates which are going up, as well as the lack of capabilities, meaning a shortage in the talents, key actions, the global headwinds what we have, and the actions we need to derive from them. I think for us in procurement supply chain, it's a unique opportunity really to define the future and create the next level of how we can impact. And this means we contribute here with all the cost measures, managing the supplier ecosystem, but it's not only just on the cost side. It is also thinking about the value what a supplier can potentially bring. And this means also contributing to new objectives like delivering innovations, thinking about the best way in partnering to drive more resilience, but also how to deal and how to create impact for sustainability. That's what we can do, and it's amazing seeing that all these priorities, what the C-suite, the CEO has, is directly linked to what we in supply chain and procurement are dealing with on a daily basis. So it's time now to prepare in the best way, and let's have a look. What is the feedback and what is it, what procurement sees right now, and how to bring both worlds together. By that, Christoph, probably you want to share the latest insights.
Yes, I would like to. Let's cut right into our study. Three things first. So the data is really fresh. We just finished the data collection a couple of weeks ago. The data collection ran from February to March 2023. Second, it's really a worldwide data set. With collaboration, thanks to the collaboration with ISM, we were able to gather data in the US, in Europe, and in Asia. As you see here on the left side, roughly 60% of the data points stem out of North America, 20% out of Europe, and 20% out of Asia. And third, it's really a huge data collection effort, probably one of the largest procurement surveys currently in the market. On the right side, you see that we were able to gather data points from everywhere in the organizational hierarchy, from CPO roles all the way to individual contributors. For the structure of our survey, we used a very simple framework which purports that any organization consists of 4 parts or elements: people, technology, task, processes, and the operating model, the structure. And with regard to these 4 elements, we structured then also our findings. On the right side, you see already the first high-level insight that we were able to obtain from the survey. We asked our respondents with regard to performance roadblocks, what of these 4 elements is currently the most constraining, the most hampering in attaining higher levels of performance. And what you see, and very much also matches to with what Marcel just said from the CEO or C-suite perspective, the people side is the most relevant, the most challenging performance constraint at the moment, followed by technology, and aspects of processes and tasks, and finally structure are less relevant. We have one very insightful aspect to the people dimension. What we find in our data is that organizations, procurement organizations, which are characterized by a high level of entrepreneurial orientation, are able to relax that people task challenge more than their peers. And for them, it's then not the people dimension which is the most performance constraining, but then technology, processes, tasks, and finally the structure. So if your organization is characterized by this entrepreneurial orientation, a construct that is formed by a mindset of proactiveness, innovativeness, posture, and fosters risk-taking among its participants, are more likely to attract and retain talents for their organization. We have, of course, also asked our respondents to what extent they believe the procurement function will develop in the next 12 months to come. This is what you see here in the middle. We asked them, do you believe that procurement will be responsible for more or less spend? And the relative majority or absolute majority of the response believe that the spend will further increase in the next year. On the right side, you see that typical question that we always ask with regard to horizontal alignment. To what kind of function or role does the highest ranked purchasing procurement official report to? And you see that roughly 26% fourth reports to the CFO. But what we were also interested to find is that also roughly 25% of the CPOs are reporting directly to the CEO, suggesting that they are in the top management team or even in the board of their respective companies. Slightly related to that is this infamous seat at the table discussion. The question whether procurement is invited to participate in discussions of specific importance. And this is what we wanted to also answer our respondents. We brought them into this hypothetical experiment, asking them, consider a situation where you are invited to a strategic meeting that revolves around a specific topic. How likely is it that you as procurement will be invited? And if you would kind of express this likelihood in a certain fraction or proportion of people participating at that meeting, expressed in percentage points, then you see the results. If the topic is about cost, delivery, or quality, then procurement is very likely to take part of that conversation. But if the topic revolves around innovation, flexibility, or sustainability, then you see that the kind of involvement of procurement is lesser. Or a lesser extent, which, if we consider what we just heard about the CEO, C-suite perspective, is kind of a daunting fact, because procurement obviously will also like to be considered, or their perspective be considered when it's about innovation or sustainability. The strategic, or the contribution of procurement to the strategy of their firms, generally speaking, the competitive advantage of their firm, is something that we then analyzed in more detail. We were interested in competitive priorities and to what extent procurement is contributing to the specific emphasis on these competitive priorities in their firms. So what you see here on the left side are the competitive priorities that we were looking at, basically informed by general strategy literature such as Michael Porter, cost, quality, or differentiation, all the way to innovation and then also sustainability. And you see now the findings with regard to the general posture of the firm, the top management perspective, and on the very right side you see the perspective of procurement. So we ask respondents, please use 100 points and distribute these 100 points into these competitive priorities, so forcing them basically to consider trade-offs. In the middle, this is the perspective of the top management, so how the respondents would consider that their firms emphasize these competitive priorities. And you see that cost is the largest competitive priority, so most firms, if you will, are pursuing a cost leadership kind of direction, and then feature differentiation such with quality delivery is less important, and innovation and sustainability ranks lowest. But what's particularly interesting for us is that if you now see how procurement is pursuing these competitive priorities, you see that there's not a perfect match. Usually we would expect that if you're a function that seeks to really support the competitive direction of your firm, that they should somehow overlap. But what we find is that procurement is, relatively speaking, even stronger emphasizing cost, and even to a lesser extent less focusing on innovation and sustainability. And this is something that we will analyze a little bit later with regards to sustainability as this intention-action gap. For the moment, keep that in mind. We are still according to these numbers, as procurement more or less the cost guys and girls rather than the sustainability and innovation. Finally, we were interested in to what extent the recent crisis, the crisis that has impinged on all industries during the last 3 years, how they have reshaped or changed procurement strategies. And we were interested in, let's say, a list of relevant variables, which I would like to briefly show you. The first variable asks respondents, to what extent have you seen a change in regards to localization or globalization of your supply chains because of the recent crisis? And we found that something that is particularly interesting for us as researchers, that firms apparently have been shifting more towards further localization. Second, we wanted to know whether the procurement function has seen a stronger push towards decentralization or rather a stronger push towards centralization. And again, here probably not too surprising, given that there's this risky environment. Firms have been shifting more towards centralizing, bundling, spend, more transparency, rather than giving it into the outskirts of their organization. Third, what kind of changes are on the sourcing dimension? Here, particularly now focused on single sourcing on the one end versus dual and multi-sourcing, and our respondents suggest that because of risk and as a risk management strategy, apparently a stronger preference towards dual and multi-sourcing. Although, from a research perspective, I'm not entirely convinced that this is the right strategy if you consider the full cost perspective. For the buyer-supplier relationship, the classic dichotomy, or if you will, the differential is between arm's length, adversarial, more competitive approaches on the one end versus more partnership-like postures. And here we find that because of the crisis, firms are looking into intensifying the partnership aspects of their buyer-supplier relationships and kind of going away from the adversarial approach. And the final point, inventory, more or less, we find that firms have been pushing more inventory into their supply chains in order to cope with the contingencies in their business environment. One specific aspect we were interested in was sustainability, and for a deep dive on that topic, I would like to hand over to Ruth.
Perfect, thanks. So yes, Christoph has already explained the competitive priorities and how we measured them regarding the company's top management as well as procurement. And he also emphasized that alignment is the way to go. And here we have a deep dive on sustainability. So on the horizontal axis, you have the top management emphasis on sustainability, and on the vertical axis you have the procurement's emphasis on sustainability. And what you can see is that only 45% of the companies have an alignment, and for the other companies there's a gap between intentions and actions towards sustainability. For 38%, top management is driving sustainability more than procurement, and for the remaining 17%, procurement is ahead of the company's intentions. But first of all, to have a look into how far companies are in their implementation of sustainability, we asked the respondents to indicate how far the companies are on their journey towards sustainable procurement. And when differentiating between companies selling products from companies and selling services, we can see that companies selling products are further ahead on their sustainability journey than those selling services. And on the other hand, when differentiating between companies selling to end customers and selling to business customers, we don't see a huge difference between those, and they are equally far ahead on their sustainability journey. And one important thing that pushes companies towards more sustainability are sustainability regulations. And Lastly, regarding sustainability, we asked the respondents to indicate the companies' responses towards sustainability regulations. And we saw that 46% of the companies are actually fighting, and they use the opportunities that come along with the increasing sustainability regulations and benefit from a more sustainable supply chain. On the other hand, 6% flee from the sustainability regulations by leaving certain countries or regions. Then we have two options that are a little bit in between. So first of all, it is freeze, so the companies continue business as usual and accept the risk of being non-compliant, which is a strategy that approximately 1/4 of the companies is pursuing, and the other 1/4 of the companies is pursuing a strategy where they implement sustainable actions to a low extent to appear compliant, but they still have a high risk of non-compliance. And with that, I hand it over to Marcel, and he will let you into technology.
Awesome. Great seeing the strategic, task-related topics, sustainability, definitely one. But what you also need is the technology side. And I think it's not a big surprise to see that when you ask what is it really what you're using in a company, that the interfaces, APIs, are used to a very high extent. When you go down to machine learning and artificial intelligence, it's a little bit less. Not sure how much the impact of ChatGPT is already reflected here. I'm pretty sure we will see in the next survey results an uptick on ChatGPT usage, because this is a topic and you have huge opportunities really to get certain information depending on the questions you ask. Let's also look on the degree of automation, and it's not a big surprise, and that's a differentiation what you see between the dark and the light blue, the larger organizations as well as the smaller ones. On the large organizations, P2P, I think that's a no-brainer. Very high level of automation what you see. It is more than 4 out of a ranking of 7. When you look at source to contract, so the part until a contract gets signed, the strategic category management, related activities, supplier management, here you see it is much less automation what also exists on the solution side in the market. And by that, I think we should look now a little bit on procurement overall and how is really the reputation and the Net Promoter Score developing. Christoph.
Now, let me get back again quickly to the topic of people, because that's something that we at the universities obviously are very interested in, how we can make procurement the place to go, the place to be, and the place to stay. As Marcel mentioned, one aspect in that kind of domain is the satisfaction of procurement employees. And a common format for these types of assessments is the Net Promoter Score. It's a question format that where respondents are asked to assess how likely would you recommend something to a close friend or a family member. In that case, we asked them, how likely would you recommend working in your specific procurement organization to a friend or colleague? And we were fortunate to have been asking this question already during the last couple of years. So here you see the results from 2020, 2021, 2022, and now 2023. And obviously, you see a massive decline in kind of Net Promoter Score measured satisfaction. In 2020, it was massively positive. In 2021, when the COVID crisis really kicked in, it already halved. And then it went negative last year, and this year even further negative. And here we are talking already about relatively massive negative negative values of this Net Promoter Score, which suggests that because of the stress, the changing work climate, which has been created during the last couple of years thanks to events such as COVID, the satisfaction in the procurement organization has decreased. So the main result you see up there, the good news is that it's not per se dissatisfaction with the profession or the kind of the work environment in procurement, but it's a specific negative sentiment about working in this specific procurement organization, which means it might be largely driven by the recent crisis and the stress that has been imposed on individual workers in these organizations, but not a general dissatisfaction with the procurement profession. And that brings us now to the end. Let's give you a short overview of our key takeaways. Marcel.
Christoph, many thanks. This was really insightful, getting an overview about the different dimensions. It's time to wrap it up and really see what can we do as supply chain and procurement leaders here to help supporting the C-suite agenda, the CEO priorities, and on the other side also seeing what is the best meaningful way for us as supply chain and procurement function. I think number one priority will remain, and probably also in the future might be unchanged, it is cost. We are a key part to bring down the cost of a company, focusing on direct spend as well as on indirect spend. I think that's a clear priority what procurement has. On the other side, there's much more. We have seen the CEO agenda is growth and the cost side. On the growth side, procurement can potentially do much more by being invited to the meetings, driving innovations, focusing on resilience, risk management, but also driving new topics like sustainability. Who has the largest ecosystem to connect with? It is procurement, with all the suppliers and also with all the CO2, basically what a company is buying, the scope 3, as well as also looking into ways how to optimize this, how to link it also to logistics, later on to distribution. That's a potential area to support really the two core goals, what every CEO has, the growth and the cost side. But there's more. The technology. We have seen that the automation on P2P is already far advanced. On the other side, smaller companies have potential to catch up, but also larger organizations, new technologies emerging. It is amazing seeing how fast ChatGPT made it up in 1 month to 100 million users. This is an amazing achievement and an amazing speed. There's much more to come to leverage these technologies. But technology is only one side. It is at the end the people working with the technology and driving the input to free up time, valuable time, to focus really on activities which are providing the best value for a company. And Christoph, I know people is your passion. That's the reason why you are professor and driving that. Probably you want to wrap up the next section.
Absolutely. As you said, in the universities, we are, of course, very much interested how we can attract talent for the procurement topics and make procurement a place to go, place to be, place to stay. Well, you cannot emphasize this more. Our findings actually highlight that the people dimension, the talents are at the moment the most pressing performance constraints for procurement organizations. So if you're a manager in that space, be sure that you get a head around how you can address this kind of the people challenges. And one specific aspect to that, you see that in the middle here, is that our data suggests that the satisfaction of the current people in employees in procurement has been declining massively during the last couple of years. So how to improve that satisfaction, make sure people are not running into whatever midlife crisis in procurement is a very important aspect of the future. And finally, continuing with this discussion on how crises have changed aspects in procurement, we have looked at various important variables that I've highlighted. One important thing that we find is that firms are stressing more the partnership aspects in their buyer-supplier relationships rather than the hard adversarial competitive arm's length approach. And with that, I hand over to Ruth with the final insights.
Yes, another variable that we saw that changed in the light of a recent crisis was the sourcing strategy. So we saw that companies are shifting more towards dual and multi-sourcing, which can also be sometimes more cost-intensive than relying on a single sourcing strategy. In the last years, also sustainability has become a very important topic. And when comparing the importance of sustainability among top management and procurement, we saw that for most companies, top management puts more emphasis on sustainability than procurement, resulting in a gap between the company's intentions and actions regarding sustainability. And lastly, we saw that companies that are selling products are further ahead on their journey towards their sustainability goal than companies that are selling services. And on the other hand, we saw that companies that are selling to business customers and companies that are selling to end customers are equally far ahead on their journey.
Awesome. I hope this was insightful for you. Many thanks for watching. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We will make the entire survey results available to you. And looking forward also continuing the discussion. It's up to us as supply chain and procurement leaders to define the future, create the future, and really help that we can contribute to the growth as well as to the margin of a company. Thank you very much.